I've got a list of questions, and maybe some of you have a burning question you'd like to ask, and we're going to get to it in a minute. Do you remember 5-cent cotton?
Yes, I do.
You know, cotton's selling for about, what, $1.40 a pound today? There was a little verse that said, 5-cent cotton and 40-cent meat, how in the heck can a poor man eat? That's something that the people around here remember vividly.
Yeah, we sure do.
I want to know about the lunch prices. When you were at the bank in Little Rock, you told me a story one time about where you ate and what the prices were and how you picked out your lunch.
Well, I'll tell you, Harold, let me go back to when I got hired as a college graduate at a bank in Little Rock. It was 1931, summer of 1931. They said, we can give you a permanent job every day, working every day, for $67.50 a month. Now that was offered a college graduate in Little Rock in 1931. Well, before I received my first check, Mr. Niemeyer, president of the bank, said, well, times were so hard in the bank, we'll give everybody in the employee in the bank is going to take a 10% cut. So they cut $6 and something off of that first check, and I never did get the full check. And that's how lean times were in those days, but you were tickled to death to have a job, and you worked at it.
Well, now, Archie, you told me, you said there's a place I went down to eat lunch.
I ate down at the Green Mill. I could get a corned beef sandwich for a dime and a glass of buttermilk for a nickel. So I ate on 15 cents, so that's the reason my salary looked pretty exorbitant at that time.
There was another kind of drink he could get for a dime, but he always went for the buttermilk because he saved a nickel. One of the questions they suggest here is, take us with you to a camp meeting or a movie that you attended when young.
The camp meetings were a problem in those days. They were religious arbor meetings. They had arbor and you brought your own tent and slept at night, and it lasted about 2 weeks. And the one I went to with my mother was out on Warren Springs Road, about 6 miles out there near Liddesdale. And that meeting was in the middle of the summer, hot summer. The crops had been laid by and nobody was working. And the whole area came to those meetings. They were very well attended and had good preachers, and they had a good meal tent, and they had fresh vegetables out of all the gardens and fresh meat from their own smokehouses, and we ate well and enjoyed some religious services in those days. They lasted all until the end of the 30s. They went out. They just quit. They still have one up here at Princeton, I believe, and it's still going great.
Ask the question, can you tell us about, or do you remember the oldest person you remember knowing as a child?
Well, I lived with my grandmother, and she lived to be 96. And that was quite something in those days for anybody lived much past 85. There were not many people above that age. And she was one that I remember, as well as some others around Magnolia. I'm trying to think of some that lived here quite old. late seventies when they died. That was old. They were considered old people.
Now, I understand you told us about the oil boom. It started down at the Buckner field, and then the Magnolia field was very next year, I believe, was it not?
February 1938.
And they drilled with steam boilers, and it took them weeks and weeks and weeks to get the smack over the line.
That's right.
You remember visiting any of those old steam boiler rigs?
Oh, yeah. Yes, those were steam boilers brought in here by New Team, and they didn't have gas to burn on those boilers, and there was no gas burning. And it took a long time to drill those wells 30,000 feet where they found that Psycho formation, which was so prolific and established all these fields in this county.
You know, over in Smackover, it was so bad that mules were drowned in the streets in the mud, and they had a place called Pistol Hill over there, and they had a shooting just about every Saturday night. Do you remember any of that type of thing going on when the boom was at its height here in this area?
No, we did not have that kind of element of people coming in. The ones we brought in here were more representative of the oil companies. They were, a lot of them were college graduates. They were seismograph crews. They were all engineers, well trained, and some of them married some of the local girls while they were here. And that was quite a boom to Magnolia to have those seismographs set their offices up here. Several of them did that, and that's how they found the oil. Pursued those seismograph exploration wells. They were very prominent. We enjoyed having them here. So they still stuck around and stayed here. We're glad to have them.
All right, now, bringing us up to date, I hear there's a great oil play going on south of Magnolia. Tell us something about that.
Well, I don't know a lot about it. I hear rumors of that effect, but I don't know. I haven't had any concrete evidence of any minerals being sold or leases taken. Have you?
My understanding is that they're leasing south of Magnolia, and they've already leased a good bit. And they've got something called lateral drilling that they're going to be able to drill a half a mile parallel to the surface of the earth. And it's going to be, it may be a big thing. Because there's a lot of leasing already been going on around here.
Well, I hope it continues, because it was a godsend to us. Thank goodness we, in 1938, discovered that field out here in Magnolia. It just, Buckner Field has already come in, it's already helping, and just added icing on the cake. It was good. It was very good.
Outside of, we've already mentioned my mother, who was your teacher in the 4th grade. Did you have any teacher that was a role model, or someone that you wanted to be like when you grew up? Do you remember anything of that nature? People, relatives or otherwise, who were mentors to you?
Well, I always loved history, and as one of the subjects I could make an A in. I couldn't make many A's in anything else, but I enjoyed history enough the way I read it. I read it like it was a novel. And much doing in Magnolia, so they take the train over here at Magnolia, go to Camden, and take another train to get to El Dorado. That's the only way you get to El Dorado in those days. And they had a lot of oil companies hire them to do their title work. Well, it became so heavy after the Magnolia field was discovered here that they decided they needed another good lawyer. And believe it or not, they got a lawyer out of Massachusetts named Charles Wright. He was a young man, just graduated from one of the big Eastern schools, and he's a brilliant man. And he moved to Magnolia and worked for McCoy and McCoy. Well, he was a misfit because he didn't know anything about the South, and he succeeded in making a lot of people mad. And so they had to keep him in the office writing title opinions. They couldn't let him deal with the public. He'd make a client mad before he got out the door. And his wife had taught history in Maine. She was from Maine, Mrs. Wright. And the local schools hired her as a history teacher. And she was my high school history teacher. And I give her credit for the good grades I made in history through all of my high school and college courses.
Is any question occur to you that you'd like to ask Archie?
What's this about you and Lena crossing the ocean 18 times?
18 times that you and Lena have crossed the ocean. You've done a lot of traveling in the recent and past years. You have some story you'd like to tell us about your trip, or a particular thing you enjoyed on your trips.
Well, after I retired from the insurance office, I never had traveled much. And before I retired, my brother and his wife asked us to go to Germany one summer on a trip. And he wanted to see where he had been stationed in Wiesbaden, Germany. And we flew to Frankfurt and drove on over to Wiesbaden. And he found a hotel where he was noted, where he stayed while he was served as medical officer in the American Army over there. And that kind of set us afire. So after that, we found out that Dr. John Ruff and his wife liked to travel too. So they were taking some foreign trips and they asked us to go on one of them. And we went to Europe with them about early 70s. And that did us real well. Then Lena and I went back by ourselves a year or two later, and then later on, John and Mildred, and we decided we wanted to see Spain. So Mildred was a good driver. None of us drove the cars. We'd rent cars, and she'd drive us. And they were a good couple to travel with, because John was a good navigator. We called him the navigator. Lena and I sat in the back seat. Mildred drove. She drove right down the middle of those big cities, just like she drive right around and square in Magnolia. She always prided herself in having taken a Spanish course out here at Southern Arkansas. And we were in Barcelona, Spain. I'll never forget it. We were looking for a hotel. We just had a ride there. A taxi came up beside us at a light, and Mildred leaned out the window and said, "Hotel Manila." He said, "Oh, you're looking for the Manila?" He said, "Right down there by the block." So we had a good time. We went not only to Europe, we went to Alaska, and we went to Hawaii, and Mexico, and lot of places, Canada. We thoroughly enjoy our lives, travels. We're healthy enough to go. And we're glad we traveled in because we don't have to go through all this stuff you have to go through to get on the plane, such as having your picture taken and all that stuff. And take off your shoes. We love it.
Archie, I see some people out here whose father was connected with the Eldon NW Railway. Is that right, Homer? And they had a doodle bug it ran. Tell us about the doodle bug and how they shipped cotton in here from places like Waldo and other places where they grew cotton because y'all had a high-density compressor here in Magnolia.
Yeah, we had to compress. They used to compress the bales so they could put more bales in a freight car. But LNW was a godsend to us. We had no roads. We still don't, but we didn't have any in those days. You couldn't even get to Magnesia when it rained hard like it rained the last few days. You couldn't cross creeks up here. So we used to have to take a train to go up to Magnesia to catch the time there. And so we always had to travel by train. And the LNW ran a passenger train and a mixed train. It was part freight and part. Have a passenger car on the end of it. You go down to get to Louisiana every morning and come back at night. In fact, I rode the LNW all the way to Natchez, Louisiana once.
Yeah, there was always a passenger that they called it to do.
Do you remember a long trip you took in a train to some city? And how old you were at the time when you...
Well,
You ever go to Shreveport on the train?
oh yes. You had to go. You couldn't get straight for it any other way. You had to go down on the Commonwealth all the way down. Oh yes. And to get to Little Rock, you had to go to Pine Bluff and change trains and get on another train to go into Little Rock. And I used to go to Little Rock with my dad. He was in the bank. So we'd go down business. It'd take us half a day to get to Little Rock.
Now, you were pretty young when your father died.
I was 16.
Only 16. What are some of the things you remember about your father that impressed you that you probably have imitated? And do you still think about people that have been gone that long?
Yeah. Yes, we have a lot of good friends here through the banking business. He knew everybody, knew all the merchants, knew most of the farmers in the county. He was head of the People's Bank at that time.
He was a handsome man.
Well, thank you. He loved to travel. I guess I was vaccinated by him to travel, but he late for him, but I was 13. He decided he wanted to go to New York. He never had been. And he wanted us to see New York and Washington. So in 1923, we struck out over this night in automobile, burned more oil than it did gas. And in those days, we had tourist spots, and you had a tent, and you'd throw your tent out at night, and you'd cook on a sterno stove. My mother cooked for a meal on a sterno stove. And we'd sleep on cots all the way to New York. It took us 3 weeks to get up there. Travel roads all the way till we got to Ohio and Pennsylvania. And we drove right in the middle of New York in 1923. That was almost unheard of. Arkansas license on Broadway. And that old car took us all the way up there and back. We had a lot of places.
How old were you when you learned to drive, Archie?
Chalmers. I was 14. I drove by myself at 14. My dad couldn't drive, my mother couldn't drive, so I had to drive.
Tell us something about John McGill. He's a very interesting character to me. What did he do before he discovered, just tell us something about John McGill that you remember.
Well, he studied geology at home. He went to the University of Arkansas by 1 year, and he didn't like it up there, and he came home and just started getting all his geography books out of the library wherever he could find them, and became a self-educated geologist. And city service picked him up and moved him. He got a job in Shreveport with city service as a geologist. And he was looked upon as one of the ones who helped discover oil in Columbia County through his study of geological formations.
Now, he was a bachelor. He lived at home with his folks till he was how old?
About 44.
Where did he work?
Well, believe it or not, he worked in the post office. His uncle was postmaster, Doak Bowen, and he worked in the post office selling stamps.
And he made his big strike. Where did he make his big?
Well, he had some oil out in East Texas, north of Street.
What about Northwood? Louisville.
Yeah, up the Midway field. He helped discover that Midway field, and he helped with the geology of the Magnolia field. Some of his geology was used to discover that well. But he was self-educated and brilliant man, and a lot of his books they were inherited by him. His father died early. He was a lawyer, and he had a wonderful library in the Gale house that's still standing here on Jefferson Street, Magnolia. And my nephew lives in it now. It's been restored and beautiful more. And that library gave to this library, those books. And they're right up to in this library. And he was a self-educated, successful author. Discovered a lot of oil.
They had a lot of illnesses when you were young, were not treatable by the miracle medicines that we have today. Do you remember any time when you had a serious illness, or do you remember a doctor that you went to where you could tell us something about the medical practice that was prevalent in your day,
I remember the influenza epidemic of 1918. I had the flu, and Dr. Smith lived next door to us, so he was our family doctor. And he just come to the house. There's no hospital in Magnolia until 1939, and so you had to depend on doctors to bring their pill box to your house. And they were willing to come to your house and protect you. And they'd come in and without any problem. And they were good doctors. They were all good doctors. They kept up with the times, and they were largely responsible in seeing us start thinking about a hospital at Magnolia in the 30s and saw the need here. And we were so fortunate to have had the facilities we had in the beginning of 39.
Michael Lungenau's husband, Hugh, was in the hospital with a heart attack back in 1940, as I remember. And they kept people in the hospital. How many weeks was he in there? 6 weeks? 2 months.
Well, I want to give Dr. Ivan Bruce a lot of credit. He was a classmate of mine out there, a junior college student, and a brilliant mathematician. He was an actuary, really. He could have gotten a job in New York City for any life insurance company in the United States with his knowledge of actual studies. And he saw the need for this foundation to be started, and he stayed with it when nobody else gave much help, and he had to work hard to get it started. And he used to tap me on the shoulder at Rotary Club and said, well, we're going to see so-and-so right after Rotary Club today and see if you give us some money for our scholarship program. I had to dodge it every Rotary Club I was out with him soliciting funds for the foundation. And it's been a wonderful success and such a help to this university. And in so many ways, hasn't it, Dr. Willis?
Yeah.
And there were others who are friends who came with the question quickly. There was another man or two who had a question for Archie. Harold, do you have a final question?
Well, I want to say this. They have a Friends of Miguel out at the university, and Archie's the #1 giver, and he's in the Shakespeare Society all by himself. So if any of y'all want to join Archie, you can get in that Shakespeare Society, and I'll tell you how to do it after.
Thank you for being a good friend to the library, Archie, and for being on our board for so many years. We've come a long way, and we thank you for the foundation you laid for us.
Well, thank you. I served on the Tumbie County. I was there when they formed the Tumbie Lafayette, brought in Lafayette County. I served 14 years on the library board.